ARC4 structs can store various data types that are mutable. ARC4 structs are great when you need to define a data set with different data types that can be changed. Let's go through this code example to learn how you can use ARC4 structs. To define a struct, you need to create a class, name the struct, and inherit from the arc4.struct class. Then inside of that class, you can define the data types that you want to store inside of that struct. So this to-do struct has two values, task and completed. Task has a data type of arc4.string type. Now remember, arc4 structs can only store arc4 types. So that's why we're using arc4.string type here. And the completed value has the arc4.boolean type. So inside of the to-do struct, it's going to contain what task the to-do was and whether it was completed or not. Here we have a list of to-dos, and we are creating a type alias where the to-dos is an arc4.dynamic array, and each of the element inside of the dynamic array is the to-do struct. So here we're combining the two complex data types and showcasing you how you can use struct and store them in a dynamic array. Here we have a class called ARC4 Structs, and this is the smart contract. This smart contract has one global state named to-dos, and it's the to-dos dynamic array that we defined over here. The add to-do method takes in an arc4.string type named task. So this is how you can add to-dos. If you look at the line over here, what we're doing is we are accessing the to-do struct, assigning the task argument to the task value that we defined inside of to-do, and we're initializing the completed value to false. And we're assigning this created struct to the to-do variable. Now over here, what we're doing is we're first checking if the to-do's global state has been initialized or not. If it hasn't been initialized, that means this is the first time we're adding a to-do. So what we're doing is we're saying self.todos is equal to the to-dos, the dynamic array, and we're passing the first value, which is the to-do variable. Now, you need to use the dot copy here because to-do is a mutable value and you can't assign mutable values. So you need to create a copied version of it and store that copied version to the global state. And if this is not the first time you're adding the to-do, then all you're doing is you're appending to that dynamic array of the new to-do. And then we're returning the to-dos list stored in the global state. Now let's go down to the complete to-do method. This complete to-do method takes in one argument called task, and it is an arc4.string type. We're going to do a for loop of the to-dos dynamic array stored in the global state. And we're going to get the length of that dynamic array. And we're going to use the uRange class to iterate through that dynamic array and get the indexes of those dynamic array. Then we're going to check if the to-dos bracket index.task, so the task inside of the index is equal to the task that has been passed in as the argument. And if so, we're going to update the completed value inside of that struct to true. And once that has been updated, we break the for loop, and that's the end of the complete to-do method. So this is showcasing how you can access each of the variables stored in the struct and how you can update those values. Last but not least, let's take a look at the return to-do method. This takes in one argument, task, which is an arc4 string type. And here we're creating a variable named to-do_to_return. And we're saying that this variable has the data type of to-do, which was defined over here. So we're saying this variable is now an arc4 struct type. Then we're going to initialize the exist variable to false, and then we're going to do a for loop of the dynamic array to-do stored in the global state with uRange again. Then we're going to index into each of the to-do inside of that array and check whether the task in that array is equal to the task that was passed in as the argument. And then we're going to copy that to-do struct and then assign that copied version to the to-do to return variable that we've created over here. So we're basically assigning that stored struct to a container that we can use outside. Then we're going to update the exist variable to true. And then after the for loop is done, we're going to assert that the exist is equal to true, then return the to-do to return variable. Now you can see that this method return type is a to-do class, which is the ARC4 struct that we defined above. So this is how you can return an ARC4 struct from a contract method.